This week, BMW announced the brand new M1000R, and it basically takes their most powerful engine from the M1000RR Hyperbike and slams it into their naked chassis. The result is what can only be described as a bit of a monster, but is it enough to make it the most powerful bike in the naked motorcycle segment? Well, in this video, we'll go over each of the most punchy nakeds from the major manufacturers to find out. Naturally, we'll go in reverse order, so it might surprise you to find Honda, the biggest motorcycle manufacturer on the planet, with probably the deepest pockets at the bottom of this list. And it's not like they don't have the ability to make a ridiculously powerful engine, because they've already got one in the Fireblade. In the most recent iteration of this famous line of sports bikes, the Inline 4 makes a massive 215 horsepower, which is right up there with the most powerful sports bikes. But the well-trodden route of ripping off the fairings and fitting some flat handlebars doesn't seem to appeal to Honda, because they've simply not done it. They've just stuck with the proven CB1000R for a few years now, and that's about 72 horsepower down on the Fireblade, which is basically a whole Yamaha MT-07 difference. Now, the reason it's plenty down on power is because it's based on an older Fireblade engine, the 2006 model to be precise, and so naturally you'd expect it to be a little less performant than some of the more modern designs on the market. But to be honest, the CB1000R is still plenty of bike for the road. I've borrowed a couple over the years from Honda UK, and at no point did I think it felt slow, at least on the public road. So perhaps you've got to commend Honda for not getting dragged into the spec sheets bragging war. On the other hand, to do so would bring into question the validity of this entire video, so let's just move swiftly on to the next one. Now, that would be the Suzuki GSX S1000, and you might not know it straight away from the super edgy styling, but this is another bike powered by an old favorite. The engine's derived from their K5 Inline 4, and that was introduced almost 20 years ago now in the 2005 version of their GSX R1000, so again, it's down the bottom end of the list at 150 horsepower. But look, don't write it off straight away, because I think at the time of writing, this is the most affordable bike on this list. It starts at just £11,199 in the UK. And you get plenty of bang for your buck. You've got adjustable suspension, Brembo brakes, a bunch of riding modes, and a quick shifter as standard. And so it really just depends on whether you can get over the looks. Personally, I quite like it, and I love the sharp lines and the modern stacked headlights and the choice of finishes, but I know from the comments on here that some people just prefer the old one. To me, that bike looks mega dated, but let me know which one you'd pick down in the comments below. Now, another controversial bike in terms of the looks makes its way onto the list here, and that's the Yamaha MT10, although you could say the same of any of the MT line of bikes. The 10 is distinctively weird though, because it's got those twin headlights, and then you've got the daytime running lights above, and it just gives it these eyes with big fat eyebrows. It's not for me personally, although I would say I actually think the rest of the bike looks quite smart, especially in the grey and cyan finish. But without doubt, the biggest selling point of this bike is the cross-plane inline 4 that's derived from the engine in their R1 Superbike. This unconventional firing interval gives the CP4 a sort of V-twin or V4 type sound, and it's just a beautiful noise, especially under full acceleration. It's just a shame that, as with most bikes now, the really limiting emissions regulations mean that the exhaust system is so restrictive that you can barely hear a thing. But for the latest gen MT10, Yamaha have found a bit of a workaround with a feature that's called an acoustic amplifier grille that's located in the top of the fuel tank. This basically amplifies the induction sound by resonating, and the result is some extra volume specifically around the rider, which I guess is exactly where it counts. I absolutely love clever little design features like that on bikes. Anyway, it's 164 horsepower. Up next, we've got the Aprilia V4 with, you guessed it, a V4 engine, and this one makes 175 horsepower peak, which is enough to earn it 8th place. That's right, 7 more bikes to come on this list, and they're all over 173 horsepower. It's mad. Now, I already know exactly what some of you are going to say about this one in the comments. This is a list of naked bikes, and this is not a naked bike. And I kind of get what you're saying. It's got that little fairing or fly screen at the front there, but it is naked on the sides, and it's got the flat handlebars, so it does basically fit the naked formula. Either way, what it is probably the best looking bike on this list, especially in the factory version with the red and black finish. Bella. Next up, it's the Speed Triple RS at 178 peak. That's a massive increase on the previous generation, taking it from what was a fairly quick road bike at about 150 horsepower and thrusting it up to within a few horsepower of some of the most powerful bikes on the market. At the same time, they dropped loads of weight, about 10 kilograms, and so the power to weight on this new bike is up by about 25% on the previous generation. Plus, it's got all of the tech and features you'd expect from a modern premium naked motorcycle, and the only thing it doesn't have is the shouty super naked looks. It's a lot more muted than the KTM, for example. Could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. It really depends on your personal taste. Next up, we're off to Austria, and this is the KTM 1290 Super Duke R. Now, I absolutely love this bike. It's full of torque and power, and the 1290 V-twin has bags of character too. In fact, I think I'm right in saying this is the most powerful twin-cylinder bike that you can currently buy, so if you like a big V-twin, then this is pretty much your only super naked option. Now, at the top of this lineup, you've got the Evo model, which adds their semi-active electronically adjustable suspension, and there's a full review of that bike on the channel, which I've linked to down in the description below. Now, it might surprise you to learn that the Speed Triple isn't the most powerful British design naked bike on this list, or at least it won't be soon, because Norton have teased their V4 powered modern interpretation of a cafe racer, and they've called it the V4 CR. It's built upon the same platform as their V4 SV sports bike, and as a result, it gets a whopping peak power figure of 185 horses, which puts it firmly inside the top 5. It's definitely a striking visual design. I saw it last year at Motorcycle Live here in the UK, and it's absolutely every bit the head turner. And the good news is that I believe it won't be long until we actually get to go for a spin on one. So if you're new here and you want to see that video as soon as it goes live, then I politely suggest that you hit the subscribe button. Now we're into the upper echelons here, and the power figures are getting pretty real at 197 horsepower, and that's from the Kawasaki ZH2 with its supercharged inline 4. Now we know this engine can make more power. There's a fully faired H2 which makes 228 horsepower, and then its ballistic track specific counterpart, the H2R, which makes a mind-bending 306 horsepower. But they've clearly tried to keep the engine in check here and give it some real-world usability and mid-range, and so that's why it's got a similar state of tune to that H2SX Sports Tourer. Torque-wise, it's actually pretty impressive. The impeller blades on the supercharger are specifically designed to boost that mid-range, and so it's got 137 Newton meters at 8,500 RPM, which is pretty meaty. But look, nobody actually asked about peak torque. This is peak power we're after, and for that you need revs, and that's exactly what the Envy Augusta Brutale 1000 RR delivers. 208 horsepower up at 13,000 RPM, and all in a package that weighs just 186 kilograms dry. Now, I've actually been lucky enough to ride this one, and it was an absolute blast, but I've got to be honest, I was slightly on edge because I think it's the most expensive bike I've ever ridden, or certainly it's pretty close. It starts at just shy of 30 grand. It's a heck of a lot of money, but it's one of those bikes that just looks ridiculously impressive when you see it in the flesh, and there are loads of CNC parts and carbon finishes and a level of detail in each and every component that I'd say is basically unparalleled. But if that's all a bit pricey, you can get similar engine performance figures for about 10 grand less if you opt for the absolutely bargainous Ducati Street Fighter V4. The regular V4 starts at just under 20 grand, and another 1,500 quid will get you the S model with the fancy electronic semi-active suspension, and yet it makes the same 208 horsepower as the MV. Then there's the SP model at 30 grand with the carbon wheels, or the lime green Lamborghini edition at £56,000. So, you know, nice to see Ducati catering for a wide range of financial situations there. Seriously though, the Street Fighter V4 is massively impressive, and it packs an absolute bucket load of features and tech, and so it takes something special to beat it. But that's exactly what BMW have delivered with the M1000R, a true super naked in terms of power output with 210 horsepower, making it the king of the hill on this list. Now, if you want the full lowdown on this bike, well, you're in luck, because I've already made a comprehensive look at all the new features, and you can watch it by clicking here now.